Hello, friend, and welcome to the Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're drifting into the hushed and mysterious world of quiet supercells, those slow-turning, low-rumbling wonders of the sky that carry immense beauty without the noise. These are not the storms that arrive with a shout, but the ones that move with grace, that breathe across the plains with a gentle spin, where light curls behind curtains of cloud, and the wind speaks in softened tones. In their stillness, there is structure. In their shape, there is wonder. And in their silence, something strangely soothing. Maybe your day has been long, or maybe you just need a moment to feel held by the sky. Whatever brought you here tonight, I'm glad you're here. How's the sky looking where you are? Can you sense the softness in the air? If you enjoy these calming weather journeys, you're welcome to like or subscribe, only if it feels restful to do so. Now you can settle in, let your breath slow, let your body get comfortable. There's nothing you need to hold on to, just the quiet turning of the clouds above. Let's begin. Let's begin with the basics, softly, slowly, without rush. A quiet supercell is a special kind of thunderstorm. It doesn't call for attention with loud cracks of thunder or harsh winds that shake the trees. Instead, it moves with a hush. It rotates gently, almost secretly, high above the landscape. Its silence doesn't mean it's small. It can stretch for many miles across the sky, like a drifting cathedral of cloud and air. While most people think of supercells as loud and dramatic, roaring with wind, flashing with lightning, some are the opposite. These quieter ones are like a story being whispered. They carry the same deep structure, the same fascinating meteorological balance, but with the volume turned down. The kind of storm you might see from afar and feel a strange sense of calm while watching. These storms are born from ingredients that come together just right. Warm, moist air rising slowly into cooler layers above. A bit of wind shear, just enough to encourage the air to twist softly. Not in a rush, not in a rage. Just a slow, steady spin that turns the sky into a canvas of rotating grace. Their cloud tops can rise taller than Mount Everest, but from the ground, all you might hear is the gentle hush of wind through the grass. The term quiet doesn't mean weak. It means composed, reserved, the kind of strength that doesn't need to shout, the kind of weather that feels like it's listening to the earth just as much as it's moving above it. Tonight, we'll explore how these quiet supercells form. We'll wander through their structure, how warm air rises and cooler air sinks, how rotation takes shape within the storm's core, and we'll discover what makes them so special. There's poetry in their patience. They're not storms that rush in and vanish. They meander, they breathe, they stretch across the sky like long, slow thoughts. And while their rotation is strong, it often stays hidden, aloft, wrapped in cloud, quietly influencing the shape of the world below. As we begin our journey through the realm of quiet supercells, let's hold on to this. There is beauty in stillness, power in silence, and wonder in the way the sky can move without making a sound. So, if your mind has been noisy today, let it match the calm of the clouds. Let the quiet supercell remind you that not everything powerful has to be loud. To understand the quiet supercell, we must gently peel back the layers of its design. A supercell is a symphony of motion, a softly turning machine in the sky, made not of metal, but of wind, water, vapor, and warmth. And like any finely balanced system, its beauty lies in how each part interacts with the others, not in chaos, but in calm cooperation. At the heart of every supercell is the updraft. This is where warm, moist air rises from the surface into the sky above. But it doesn't race. It lifts with quiet intent, like steam drifting upward from a warm cup. As the air rises, it cools. And as it cools, moisture condenses, forming clouds that billow gently skyward. Then there's the downdraft. This is where the air, now cooled and a little heavier, begins to sink slowly back down. But even this descent is part of the balance. The downdraft clears space, making room for new air to rise. And between these two flows is something truly magical: the mesocyclone, a softly rotating column of air, upright like a spine. It turns not with violence, but with grace. It is the structure that gives the supercell its name. A supercell, a storm that sustains itself through this perfect exchange of rising and sinking air, gently spun. When the updraft and downdraft are separated just enough, not tangled, but cooperative, the storm becomes long-lived, balanced. It can continue to rotate quietly for hours, drifting across wide landscapes, painting shadows and shapes across the twilight sky. From a distance, it may look like a layered tower, wide at the base, narrow in the middle, and crowned with an anvil-shaped top spreading out gently into the night. As we looked closer, we'll notice the softness in its edges, the way the air flows around it, like water around a stone. There's no hard outline, no harsh breaks, just a continuous, flowing sculpture of cloud and motion. This is what makes the anatomy of a supercell so mesmerizing. It's not a single gust, or a single cloud. It's a conversation between sky and earth, a softly whispered exchange of heat, moisture, and spin. Tonight, we'll keep exploring this balance. But for now, rest in the comfort that even the most complex weather systems can be peaceful. The sky doesn't always rush. Sometimes, it just turns slowly. Within the quiet supercell, there lives a secret motion. Not wild, not urgent, but steady, like the heartbeat of the atmosphere. This is the mesocyclone, a tall, slow-turning column of rotating air that forms inside the storm. It isn't something we can easily see with the naked eye, not unless the clouds reveal it. But it's there, turning, organizing the storm from within, giving it shape, giving it purpose. The mesocyclone begins deep in the storm's body, where the updraft, the rising air, encounters winds that shift direction with height. This change in wind creates a gentle horizontal spin, like a lazy wheel rolling on its side. And then, as warm air rises, it tilts this wheel upright. What results is something quiet and extraordinary. We imagine it like a slow breath the sky takes, turning inward, rising upward, never rushing, just rotating in place, like a soft spiral stairwell built from wind and cloud. This rotation helps the storm organize its energy. It separates the updraft from the downdraft, allowing the storm to sustain itself longer than ordinary storms. And as it spins, it also stretches, pulling air upward, helping to build those towering cloud tops that drift into the stratosphere like softened sculpture. And yet, from below, silence. No roaring engine, no flashing signal. Just the presence of a structure quietly at work above the earth. Some mesocyclones can lead to stronger events, but in quiet supercells, they often stay aloft, never touching the ground, never stirring fear. They remain graceful, distant, spinning in stillness. To float alongside one is to witness the architecture of the sky in motion, to see weather not as a threat, but as an unfolding breath. So tonight, as we drift gently through the layers of this storm, remember this. Even in the heart of the storm, there can be calm. Even in the center of rotation, there can be peace. And sometimes, the most powerful movements happen in silence. Not every storm needs to announce itself. Some arrive without spectacle, without sharp edges or sudden sounds. These are the quiet supercells, the storms that form under gentle conditions, where the atmosphere feels settled, patient, and unhurried. Their silence is not an absence of energy, but a reflection of balance. To understand what makes a supercell quiet, we begin with atmospheric stability. In these moments, the air near the surface is cooler and calmer, holding the warmth above it in a gentle embrace. Rising air still exists, but it lifts slowly, as if respecting the layers it passes through. There is no urgency in its ascent, only persistence. Wind shear also plays a role, but here it is softened. Instead of sharp changes in wind speed and direction, the winds curve gradually with height. This gentle shear allows rotation to form without agitation. The storm begins to turn, but the motion is smooth, like a slow-moving current in a deep lake. Cooler surface air further muffles sound. It acts like a blanket, absorbing vibrations before they reach the ground. Thunder still forms high within the cloud, but by the time its echoes travel downward, they are softened, stretched, sometimes fading entirely into the night. Quiet supercells often form away from sharp boundaries. No abrupt fronts slicing through the air, no collisions of opposing forces. Instead, the atmosphere feels cooperative. Warm air is invited upward rather than forced. Moisture condenses without conflict. Clouds grow tall, but with restraint. Inside these storms, precipitation may fall gently, sometimes never reaching the ground at all. Rain can evaporate into dry layers below, leaving behind only a faint scent of cooled air. Lightning may flicker within the cloud, hidden, its light diffused by thick layers of vapor. From the ground, a quiet supercell can feel almost meditative. The sky darkens slowly, shadows stretch, the wind turns cool and steady. There is movement above, but it does not intrude. These storms remind us that nature does not always need drama to be powerful. Sometimes, the most enduring systems are the ones that move with care. Quiet supercells show us that strength can exist alongside softness, that rotation does not require chaos, and that silence can still carry meaning. As we continue, let the idea settle gently. A storm can whisper, and still be magnificent. Twilight is a meeting place. It is the hour when day loosens its grip, and night slowly takes over, when the sky becomes a canvas of fading blues, muted purples, and soft amber light. This is when quiet supercells often reach their most graceful expression. As the sun sinks, surface heating eases. The atmosphere exhales. The storm no longer feeds on intense warmth, but on what remains, stored energy drifting upward in slow currents. The supercell does not collapse. It matures. It settles into itself. At twilight, the storm's edges soften. The towering updraft remains tall, but its outlines blur as light scatters through layers of cloud. The anvil spreads outward like a wide, calm wing, catching the last glow of the sun and reflecting it back in hushed tones. Inside the cloud, motion continues. Air still rises and turns, but the storm feels less driven. Lightning, if present, glows dimly within the cloud, gentle pulses rather than sharp flashes. Thunder becomes distant, stretched thin across the cooling sky. From below, the world grows quiet. Birds settle, winds slow. The storm becomes part of the evening rather than a disruption to it. Its presence feels observational, like something watching the Earth drift into sleep. Twilight storms often feel larger than they did in daylight. Without harsh contrast, the cloud appears vast and endless. Its base lowers gently, textured with folds and shadows that move almost imperceptibly. The rotation above is unseen, but sensed, like the slow turning of a thought. There is comfort in watching a storm at this hour. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands attention. The sky simply transitions, and the supercell moves with it, drifting across the horizon like a memory forming. As night deepens, the storm may weaken, or it may continue quietly onward, illuminated only by stars and distant glow. Either way, twilight leaves its mark, transforming the supercell into something softer, more reflective, more serene. Here, weather becomes atmosphere in the truest sense. Not an event, but a feeling. Inside a supercell, the sky is layered, not stacked abruptly, but arranged gently, like tiers of a sky-bound wedding cake, each level shaped by temperature, moisture, and motion. To drift through these layers is to take a slow ascent through the atmosphere itself. We begin near the base, where cumulus clouds gather. Here, warm air rises in soft columns, carrying moisture upward. The clouds feel close, textured, almost touchable, rounded forms drifting just above the landscape. This is the storm's foundation, quiet and patient. As we rise higher, the air cools. The clouds grow taller, stretching upward into towering cumulus. Motion becomes more defined, but still unhurried. The updraft flows steadily, lifting air like a slow elevator, guided by balance rather than force. In the mid-levels, clouds thicken. Here, water droplets mingle with ice crystals. The storm's internal circulation becomes more apparent, air rising on one side, sinking gently on the other. The clouds take on layered shapes, folded and sculpted by wind, forming soft bands and veils. Higher still, we reach the storm's crown. Temperatures are cold here, and clouds turn icy and delicate. The updraft spreads outward, forming the familiar anvil, a wide, flattened cap that drifts gracefully with the upper winds. Light passing through this layer becomes diffuse, glowing softly rather than shining brightly. Each layer plays its role. None rush, none compete. Together, they create the supercell's form, vertical yet balanced, powerful yet composed. To imagine these layers is to understand the storm not as a single object, but as a vertical journey, a quiet ascent from warmth to cold, from earthbound air to the edge of space. And as we drift back down, through each softened layer, we're reminded the sky is deep, the atmosphere is patient, and even the tallest storms are built gently, one layer at a time. Some forces in the atmosphere are bold, easy to see, easy to feel. Others work quietly in the background, shaping storms not with strength, but with subtle guidance. Wind shear is one of those invisible sculptors. It's the gentle difference in wind speed and direction as you move upward through the atmosphere. Near the ground, winds might move slowly from one direction. A little higher up, they may move faster, or curve, or shift. The change isn't always obvious, but for a forming storm, it's everything. Imagine a soft hand on the back of a spinning dancer, steadying it, guiding it forward. Not pushing too hard, just enough to keep the motion going. That's what wind shear does to a supercell. If the shear is too weak, the updraft rises vertically, then collapses onto itself. The storm may grow briefly, but it won't last. It fizzles like a thought that never had time to form. But if the shear is too strong, too fast, too conflicting, the storm tears apart. It stretches and fractures, its pieces pulled in different directions. The sweet spot lies in the balance. In quiet supercells, wind shear is just strong enough to tilt the updraft, separating it from the downdraft, allowing rain and cool air to fall behind the rising current. This separation lets the storm breathe. It allows it to spin gently, to organize its structure, to become something more than a cloud. From the ground, we can't see wind shear directly, but we can see its signature. You might notice the updraft leaning slightly, angled like a tower bowed by time. You may spot smooth bands of cloud wrapping subtly around the mesocyclone, showing the careful balance between rising and turning. Wind shear also helps the storm rotate. When winds shift direction with height, say from southeast near the surface to southwest higher up, it creates horizontal spin in the air. If that spinning layer is lifted by an updraft, it can tilt upright and begin to turn. Not rapidly, not violently, just slowly, gracefully. The kind of rotation that makes the atmosphere look like it's thinking. Tonight, we let ourselves drift into that current. We feel the layers of wind, stacked, quiet, each one guiding the next. We imagine the sky moving not as a storm, but as a breath. A sculpted, balanced, layered breath. Let the idea of wind shear guide your own rest, not in a rush, not in confusion, but in gentle alignment. Like the sky, learning how to turn. Not all storms bring rain to the ground. Some form high above the land, their cloud bases elevated, their precipitation never quite arriving, just soft trails that vanish before they touch the earth. These are dry supercells, or high-based storms. They move quietly across the sky, leaving no puddles, only veils of moisture that dissolve into air. To witness one is to see a different kind of grace. These storms look lighter, less dense, more sculpted. Their cloud bases are higher, often with a gentle underside that resembles a smoothed ceiling. From these heights, you may see virga trailing below, faint streaks of rain falling through dry air, slowly evaporating as they descend. It's rain, but only in intention. By the time it nears the surface, it's gone, absorbed by the warmth, returned to vapor. There's something poetic about that. Rain that almost was, a storm that completes its journey mid-air. From a distance, these supercells drift like brushstrokes, broad towers and curved anvils painted across the sky. Their forms are more visible in dry air, their colors sharper. You might see sunbeams slicing between their arms, casting golden shadows across the plains. And because they don't bring heavy rain or thunder, they feel calm, observational, as if the sky is practicing how to storm, but without need for result. Sometimes, these storms form over arid landscapes, where the surface air is dry and warm. They rise beautifully, supported by upper-level moisture and soft lift, but never make full contact with the earth. You might stand in total silence beneath one, the wind calm, the ground dry, watching the storm rotate and ripple above, leaving only the memory of falling rain. These high-based supercells can last for hours, drifting over hills, across rangeland, casting long shadows without leaving a drop. They are like poems written in the sky, whose final line is never spoken. Tonight, let them remind you, not everything needs to arrive to be felt. Some storms are made only of movement, and sometimes that's enough. In most storms, lightning is a voice. It shouts, it flashes, it declares itself. But in quiet supercells, lightning becomes a whisper. Instead of pulsing constantly through the clouds, it flickers once, maybe twice, and then fades again into stillness. These are low flash storms, where electricity builds more slowly, where the atmosphere moves with softness rather than spark. And when lightning does arrive, it feels more like a thought than an event. You might see it pulse within the cloud. No bolt, no fork, just a soft glow from within, as if the storm is remembering something, briefly, before returning to silence. Sometimes, the lightning stretches behind the anvil, where few eyes are watching. It may reflect gently across a layer of cloud, or ripple outward like a breath of light. The thunder that follows is often distant, low, rolled out like velvet. It doesn't crack or boom, it hums. These rare flashes remind us of how varied a storm's voice can be. Not all light is loud, not all energy demands to be seen. There's something deeply calming about waiting in a storm and seeing nothing, until suddenly, just once, the sky blinks, then closes its eyes again. In these quiet moments, you feel more than see. You feel the stillness around the flicker, the weight of air before and after, the long pause between pulses, and you begin to understand that lightning isn't always a storm's climax. Sometimes it's just a sigh. Let tonight's sky be lit by softness. Let the flashes be rare and the spaces between them restful. Because sometimes the storm doesn't need to shine brightly. Sometimes it only needs to glow, then rest. There's something enchanting about watching a supercell from a distance. When you're far enough away, when the storm is just a shape in the sky and not a sound in your ear, it becomes art. A sculpture made of wind and vapor, carved not with tools, but with time. From a quiet field, lying back in the grass, you might first notice the storm as a shape on the horizon. It rises above the flatness like a ship made of cloud, its curved edges smoothed by the wind. There's no rush to it, no motion that startles, just a steady, almost imperceptible turn, like the slow ticking of a skybound clock. The rotation of a supercell is not like a spinning top. It's more like the slow swirling of milk into tea, soft and layered. The air within the storm turns on a gentle axis, wide and tall. From the ground, you may see the clouds rotating, like a slow pirouette traced across the sky. But often, the motion is so subtle that you sense it more than see it. If you watch long enough, patterns begin to reveal themselves. A band of cloud curling inward, a tail-like streamer stretching from the base, a flicker of lightning quietly illuminating the structure from within. All of it unfolds slowly, with no need for urgency. You become a quiet observer to something much larger, much older, and infinitely more patient. Sometimes, in the calmest of moments, you may feel the breeze shift ever so slightly, not harshly, just enough to remind you that you are under something alive. The grass rustles softly, the air cools. A low rumble travels across the field, taking its time to reach you. You may find your breath slowing to match the rhythm of the clouds, your thoughts drifting like the anvil top spreading outward in the sky. There's no need to understand every layer of what's happening, just to notice, to feel, to rest beneath it. Watching a quiet supercell from afar is not about excitement, it's about reverence. It's a kind of stillness that invites you to be present, not because something dramatic might happen, but because what is happening already is enough. This is the silent rotation of the atmosphere, the slow turning of a storm that holds power without sound, that moves without needing to rush. Let the distance be your comfort. Let the sky turn gently above you, and let the clock made of clouds keep its quiet time. Some supercells are born in daylight, others bloom after dark. These are the nocturnal supercells, storms that form not in the heat of the day, but under cooler skies, when the stars are out and the world has gone quiet. They emerge with mystery, their forms lit not by sun, but by moonlight and the faintest shimmer of distant starlight. At night, the atmosphere behaves differently. The surface cools. The warmth of the day fades into the upper levels of the sky, leaving a layer of calm near the ground. This can help stabilize the lower atmosphere, creating a setting where only the most patient storms are born. But when just enough warmth remains above, when the cap is still present but gently weakening, and when wind shear remains softly aligned, a supercell may form in the velvet darkness. These nocturnal storms are often quieter by nature. Without strong surface heating, they tend to move slower. Their cloud bases may be higher, and their structures, while still rotating, feel dreamlike in their silence. Lightning inside these storms doesn't flash aggressively. It glows. It flickers behind the clouds like the heartbeat of the sky. The light appears in pulses, casting momentary shapes into view, a gentle backlight on an ever-shifting canvas. From the ground, these storms are often seen more than heard. The thunder, if it comes, is softened by the night air. The wind is steady, not sharp. The clouds drift like soft thoughts crossing a deep blue sky. There is something ancient about storms at night. They feel timeless, removed from urgency, like weather continuing its work in the absence of watching eyes. And yet, for those awake to see it, the experience is quietly profound. In these late hours, everything slows. The sky turns gently. The stars blink on and off behind passing clouds. The supercell moves across the landscape without making demands. It does not shout. It does not seek attention. It simply rotates, continues, and then, eventually, fades. These are the storms that lull the atmosphere to sleep, that drift without disturbing, that remind us. Even the night sky dreams. Every calm storm begins with something holding it back. In meteorology, we call it the cap, a layer of warm air above the surface that prevents thunderstorms from forming too easily. Think of it as a soft ceiling, gently pressing down on the atmosphere, keeping things still. During the day, warm air near the surface wants to rise, but if the cap is strong enough, it resists. It holds that rising motion back, like a lid on a gently boiling pot. Storms cannot grow, not yet. The atmosphere remains stable, resting beneath this invisible barrier. But sometimes, just as the sun begins to set and the energy of the day starts to wane, the cap weakens. Not suddenly, not with a snap, but gradually, like a whispered thought breaking through a quiet room. And in that delicate moment, a single storm may slip through. This is when a quiet supercell is born. The cap ensures that only the most perfectly aligned conditions lead to development. It favors balance over chaos, precision over abundance. Instead of dozens of scattered storms, we see one, carefully formed, gracefully structured, and free to rotate in solitude. The presence of a cap can help create the environment for a long-lived, isolated storm to form, without competition, without interruption. The cap is not an obstacle. It's a sculptor. It gives shape to the sky's potential. And when the time is right, when just enough lift is present, the cap allows a single column of air to break through, to rise, to condense, and to begin the slow spiral that leads to a quiet supercell. So, while it may seem like nothing is happening, while the skies remain blue and the air feels still, the atmosphere is waiting, listening, preparing. Sometimes it's the quietest conditions that lead to the most graceful storms. Supercells are sculptors, but instead of using stone or clay, they use moisture, wind, and the breath of the atmosphere. They carve the sky slowly, forming spirals, towers, overhangs, and sweeping arches that shift and stretch as the storm moves forward. Watching these forms develop is like witnessing nature create art in real time at sky scale. From the ground, the first shapes might appear as simple cloud buildups, rising towers of cumulus, soft and cottony. But as the storm begins to rotate, these towers lean and curve, twisting slightly, like a slow spiral staircase that ascends into the fading light. These motions are not abrupt. Nothing snaps or jerks. Each new shape emerges from the one before it, layered over time like brushstrokes in the sky. You might see a beaver's tail, a smooth, flat ribbon of cloud extending from the storm's base, drawn inward like a gentle stream feeding the structure. Or a shelf cloud, curved and wide, hovering low like the lip of a wave frozen mid-crest. These features form slowly, carried by soft winds and tilted by gentle shears in the atmosphere. Above, the main updraft may carve out a bell shape, rounded, rising, beautifully symmetrical. It may lean forward into the motion of the storm, forming what meteorologists call an overhang, a shaded lip of cloud where upward moving air meets sinking air and begins to curl. These are not aggressive features. Even when dramatic in appearance, they arrive quietly. No harsh lines, no loud arrivals, just continuous motion shaped by balance, by moisture condensing in rhythm with invisible wind patterns. Sometimes, the storm will form striations, horizontal bands stacked one above the other, like the rings of a slow-turning vinyl record in the sky. These striations reveal the rotation of the supercell, layer by layer, motion wrapped in motion. And just when you think the structure is complete, the storm changes again. Light shifts, the angle of the sun softens shadows. The forms blur, rebuild, and evolve. Nothing stays still, but nothing rushes. To lie back beneath a quiet supercell is to witness the sky shape itself. Not with force, but with intention. Each spiral, each overhang, each sweeping arch is a signature in the sky's own handwriting. So, let your thoughts turn slowly tonight, like clouds sculpted in air. Let your breath move gently, in rhythm with the motion above. And remember, even the most intricate forms can be made with softness. Sometimes, the most enchanting part of a storm is not above, but beneath. Look up at the base of a supercell's spreading anvil, and you may notice a field of rounded, pouch-like shapes gently hanging from the cloud base. These are mammatus clouds, and they are some of the quietest signatures of the storm's slow retreat. They look like lanterns, or sky pillows, or softened beads of light and shadow gently swaying in rhythm. Mammatus clouds do not burst or flash. They descend, gently, patiently, like the sky letting go of something it was holding. These clouds often form when sinking air carries ice crystals and moisture into the underside of the anvil. The air moves downward, cools, and condenses into these rounded pouches. They do not signal rising air like the rest of the storm. They are the soft exhale that comes after. Mammatus are often misunderstood as signs of intensity, but here, in the context of a quiet supercell, they are part of the storm's winding down, the final brushstrokes, the cooling embers after a fire. As light fades, these sky lanterns catch it beautifully. A setting sun may tint them in soft orange, coral, or lavender. At night, moonlight can make them glow in silvery shadows, like a cloud field turned upside down. Watching them feels like watching a tide go out. There is movement, but it is slow, gentle, soothing. Sometimes, the mammatus field stretches for miles, covering the sky in silent rhythm. Other times, they appear only in small clusters, just a few rounded forms drifting by. Either way, they invite us to pause, to look upward, to notice the sky, not for what it might do, but for what it is doing now. You do not need to predict them. You do not need to understand every variable. Just watch. Let them sway overhead like a lullaby woven into cloud. And as the storm fades, let the atmosphere's breath become your own. Far across the sky, a sound rolls in. It is not loud, it is not sharp, it does not startle. It is thunder, but not the kind that cracks overhead. This thunder is distant, softened by time and space. It reaches you as a gentle echo, like drums rolling across hills from a forgotten sky. When a storm is far away, the sound it creates stretches as it travels. It loses its edge. What was once a sharp burst becomes a smooth, resonant wave, low, long, and calming. You may not even realize it is thunder at first. It might feel like a vibration or a hum in the air, a subtle pulse that fades in and out like breath. It is the atmosphere's way of speaking gently. The farther the lightning, the lower and longer the rumble. Trees and hills and air itself filter the sound, softening it further. There is no urgency in it, no alarm, just a slow, drawn-out voice of weather, too distant to touch you, but close enough to feel. And when it comes again, 10, maybe 15 seconds later, it does not ask for attention. It just arrives, rolls, fades, and returns. This kind of thunder is best heard in quiet places, a still night, a room with the windows slightly open, a stretch of open land, where the sky feels bigger than the earth. You do not need to count the seconds. You do not need to wonder how far away it is. It is enough to let it wash over you, to hear it not as a warning, but as a rhythm. Distant thunder reminds us that weather has a memory, that storms echo long after they have passed, and that sound, when softened, can become comfort. So let it roll, let it speak, let the low hum fold into your evening, and let yourself drift, carried by the hush that follows every thunder's sigh. In the quiet corners of the atmosphere, there is something called stability, a peaceful resistance to motion. It means that the air, instead of rising freely and quickly, prefers to stay where it is. It's comfortable, settled, still. And this stillness is what allows a quiet supercell to be born. You see, for storms to grow, air needs to rise. Warm air near the ground lifts into cooler air above, condensing into clouds, releasing energy, and continuing upward. But when the atmosphere is stable, that rising becomes harder. The layers are arranged like soft cushions. Air presses against them, but doesn't easily move through. It's not a wall exactly, more like a soft ceiling that gently says, "Not yet." In these moments, only the most subtle and patient forces are allowed to act. There is no eruption of clouds, no sudden blast of wind. Instead, there's waiting. The atmosphere holds itself together, balanced, poised, almost contemplative. But sometimes, when wind patterns are just right, and the cap above weakens just a little, a storm finds a path. A single updraft begins to rise, threading itself through the layers like a whispered thought, moving between quiet rooms. And because the air is stable, the storm grows slowly. It doesn't rush. It takes its time. The updraft doesn't shoot straight up. It turns, tilts, finds its rhythm. This gentle approach allows the storm to become more organized, more deliberate. It's not fighting other updrafts. It's alone in the sky, sculpting its own quiet identity. The result is often a long-lived rotating storm, one that moves like a ballet dancer across the plains. It has space to breathe and time to mature. Atmospheric stability doesn't stop weather, it shapes it. It chooses which storms rise. It gives them grace. And it favors storms that move with calm. So while it may seem like nothing is happening in a stable sky, beneath the surface, the ingredients are aligning quietly. The energy is being stored, balanced, prepared. And when that energy finally lifts, softly, patiently, it doesn't burst. It turns, it builds, it becomes something beautiful. Let that be a comfort to you. Sometimes, resisting the urge to rise too quickly is what allows the most lasting things to take shape. Not all moisture lives near the ground. Some of it floats far above us, in the middle and upper levels of the atmosphere. Invisible, suspended, waiting. This moisture is soft. It doesn't fall. It doesn't rush to condense into rain. Instead, it lingers, held in the sky's quiet pockets, drifting through layers of air like breath on a winter morning. And it's this hidden humidity that gives quiet supercells their strength and their softness. When warm, moist air rises into cooler layers, the moisture it carries begins to condense. Not all at once, just enough to form clouds, to release a bit of heat, to keep the air rising. And if the air above already holds moisture, then the clouds can grow taller, fuller, gentler, like steam rising through a warm bath. Mid-level moisture smooths the atmosphere's transitions. It fills in the gaps between dry layers. It prevents sharp changes and allows clouds to form gradually without tearing apart or evaporating mid-journey. High above, this moisture becomes icy, delicate. It glides into the tops of supercells and helps form wide anvils that drift outward like silk. The clouds spread, feathered and soft, held together by humidity you never saw until it revealed itself. From the ground, you may not notice this hidden moisture at all, but you'll see its effects. Clouds that linger, storms that float rather than fall, air that feels thick but calm. There's a fullness to the sky, a feeling that something is breathing above you, steadily. This moisture doesn't speak loudly. It doesn't pour down. It simply helps the storm exist, quietly, beautifully. It's easy to think of clouds as isolated things, but really, they are made of memory, of moisture that has traveled across oceans, risen through warmth, and gathered in silence until it became visible. So tonight, we drift with it, through the middle sky, through unseen humidity, through layers that breathe without sound. Because sometimes, the most important parts of the atmosphere are the ones we never see. Not every supercell leaves a mark on the earth. Some stay aloft, far above rooftops, trees, and open fields. They rotate, they breathe, they sculpt the sky, but they never send rain or wind or funnels downward. They never reach to touch. They remain suspended, like sky poems that never land. These elevated supercells are formed when the base of the storm begins higher up in the atmosphere. The surface may be dry and cool, offering little for the storm to use. But above that, in the middle layers of the atmosphere, moisture and warmth quietly gather. And that's where the storm builds. It rises into shape, finds its balance, and begins to turn. From the ground, it can appear like a hovering kingdom, a softly glowing cathedral of cloud with no sound, no rush, no urgency. You may not even feel wind at the surface. The world below stays quiet, but overhead, the sky turns with silent motion, These are storms of observation. They move with elegance, unfurling their layers slowly across the heavens. Sometimes they are seen only at sunset, lit from beneath in coral and violet. Other times they pass at night, barely visible except when lightning curls briefly behind their clouds. But even when they leave no rain on your skin, no gust through the trees, no imprint on the soil, they are still real, still powerful, still part of the sky's deeper rhythm. To admire them is to appreciate presence without impact, movement without disruption. They remind us that not everything must land to be meaningful, that not all beauty has to be felt to be known. So if you ever see one, let it pass gently above you. Let it drift like an idea, soft, complete, and untethered. A sky poem written only in air. The sky has its own architecture, and one of its most elegant shapes is the anvil. At the top of a supercell, where the rising air can go no farther, the storm spreads out, wide, smooth, flat like a stone skipping across still water. This is the anvil cloud, the crown of the storm, formed when the atmosphere sets its limit and the storm responds with grace. To understand it, we must first look at how the supercell breathes. The updraft, the rising core of warm, moist air, carries energy upward like a gentle, continuous exhale. As this air climbs, it cools, condenses, and becomes cloud. It keeps going, higher and higher, until it reaches a boundary in the sky known as the tropopause, the invisible ceiling between the low atmosphere and the stratosphere above. The tropopause is like a lid. Above it, the air is warmer again, too warm for the rising current to keep climbing. So, the updraft slows, hesitates, and then spreads outward. The result is the anvil. Its edges feather out across the sky, often for dozens of miles in every direction. If the sun is low, it lights the underside of the anvil with colors that seem to glow from within: peach, gold, or soft lilac, depending on the hour. From below, the anvil looks like a protective canopy, a silent shield between earth and sky. Its surface is often smooth, like brushed velvet. Sometimes it ripples, sometimes it flattens completely, but always it is wide, calm, and beautifully still. This flat top doesn't signal the end of the storm's life. It's part of its balance. The updraft still flows upward beneath it, like water filling a bowl. The storm still rotates, still breathes. But now its breath has found its edge. Sometimes the anvil will fan out asymmetrically, shaped by the winds in the upper atmosphere. Other times, it may appear perfectly centered, symmetrical, a slow turning disk above the clouds below. There's quiet power in this shape. It is the atmosphere saying, "This is how far you may rise." And the storm, instead of resisting, flows outward in soft agreement. The anvil is also a signal, a sign that the storm has matured, that its layers are in harmony, that it has reached its full form and is content to drift. So next time you see a flat-topped storm glowing in the distance, know that you're looking at a breath held in sky, a soft ceiling for a quiet supercell's upward sigh. What if you could float far above the earth and watch the atmosphere unfold like a living painting? That's exactly what satellites do. They orbit silently above us, watching storms form and fade with a stillness we can only imagine. And from this gentle vantage point, a supercell becomes something else entirely. From space, the storm is no longer just a weather event. It becomes motion itself. In satellite imagery, especially in slow motion, a supercell looks like a blooming flower. Its central updraft swirls upward like the stem. its anvil cloud spreads like petals, unfurling in all directions. You can see the rotation as a slow, methodical turn, like a clock made not of gears, but of breath. The clouds pulse, they stretch, they breathe. There is no sound, no weight, no sense of scale, only the quiet unfolding of sky. What might feel overwhelming from the ground becomes mesmerizing from above. A ballet of vapor, temperature, and time. Infrared imagery shows warmth and cold in ghostly contrast. Visible light reveals texture, ripples, folds, and layers, drifting like fine threads through the sky. And over the course of hours, compressed into just seconds, we see storms form, rotate, expand, and eventually dissolve into the stillness from which they came. Supercells often appear alone, singular, composed, their shape distinct from all other clouds nearby. They drift across plains and open landscapes like dancers on a vast, silent stage. From above, you see how little they disturb the earth beneath them. Just a shadow gliding across farmland, a ripple of light and motion barely touching the surface. And that's part of their magic. Quiet supercells, when seen from space, don't need to impress. They don't flash or roar. They just move, softly, purposefully. To watch them is to feel the world exhale, to realize that even in the chaos we sometimes feel, the atmosphere has its own rhythm, one that continues, quietly, above us all. So tonight, close your eyes and imagine drifting far, far above, where the earth turns slowly beneath you, and the sky opens wide like a poem written in cloud. There's a kind of storm that only belongs to the plains. It needs space, wide, uninterrupted space, no tall trees, no crowded hills, just open sky meeting open land, stretching in all directions. And when a supercell finds that landscape, it glides. Over prairies, pastures, and golden fields, a quiet supercell becomes a sculpture in motion. Its base hovers close to the earth, flat and wide. Above, its towers rise slowly, coiling upward like breath. There is no rush to the rotation, no urgency in its form, just a patient drift, like something that has all the time in the world. From the ground, the experience is cinematic. You can lie back in tall grass, the sky stretching endlessly above. The air may be still, the scent of sun-warmed soil mixing with the coolness of distant rain. And on the horizon, a storm that looks like it was painted there. It's far enough away to feel peaceful, close enough to feel alive. These storms are rarely alone. The sky itself seems to lean toward them, framing them with light and shadow. The wind, if it stirs at all, moves gently. Birds quiet their song. The land listens. As the supercell passes, it may cast a long shadow across the fields. Its anvil cloud will stretch like an arm across the sky. And for a while, time feels slower. You notice more, the subtle folds in the cloud base, the curl of a lowering, the ripple of light through distant rain curtains. These are the storms that define the heartland, not by their damage, but by their presence. They teach us about scale, how vast the sky can be, how small we are beneath it, and how peaceful it feels to simply exist beneath something greater. So tonight, imagine you're lying beneath that prairie sky. The sun is low, the storm is turning, and nothing else matters but the breath of the clouds above. Let it move slowly, let it pass without sound. Let it be your companion in quiet. Beneath every quiet supercell, there's a hidden breath, not of wind or voice, but of cooled air, gently spreading like a sigh across the land. This is the cold pool, a subtle, shallow layer of cooler air that forms beneath the storm. And while you may never feel it directly, it plays a quiet, crucial role in shaping how the storm behaves. Let's float down and feel its formation. As rain falls from the supercell's core, not all of it reaches the ground. Some of the raindrops evaporate into the drier air below, and as they do, they cool that air, slowly, silently. This process creates a small pool of air that is heavier and cooler than its surroundings. And like a soft breath, this air begins to spread outward along the surface. It doesn't rush. It doesn't tumble like a gust front in a harsh storm. Instead, it glides. The cold pool serves as a quiet boundary. It defines where the storm's influence begins and ends. As it spreads, it can lift warmer air along its edges, gently encouraging more rising motion if conditions allow. Or it can create a gentle buffer, helping the storm sustain itself without interruption. This balance between the warm air rising and the cool air settling is what keeps a quiet supercell in motion. The cold pool acts like a foundation, helping regulate the storm's breath, its boundaries, and its rhythm. From above, this layer is invisible, but you might feel it pass over you, like a soft breeze carrying a note of coolness, even on a warm day. A subtle shift in temperature, a hush in the leaves. As the supercell drifts across the plains, the cold pool moves beneath it like a shadow, a partner. It reshapes the atmosphere with every mile, smoothing the path ahead. And just as the storm forms from contrasts, heat and moisture, lift and rotation, the cold pool becomes one more element in the dance. It doesn't dominate, it supports, it whispers balance into the system. Sometimes, in a field or an open plain, you'll notice the air cools ever so slightly before the rain even arrives. That's the cold pool reaching you first, not as a warning, but as a gentle preview of the sky's breath. Tonight, let it remind you that even unseen things can shape the world above. That softness can guide motion, and that balance, like a storm, can begin with something quiet. There's a special moment that happens when storm and sun share the same sky. As the sun descends and the world begins to dim, the low golden light reaches up, stretching across the horizon until it touches the edge of a supercell. And just for a few minutes, the storm becomes something else. It glows. The golden hour, as photographers and dreamers call it, is that short stretch of time when the sun's light softens. It bends through the atmosphere at a low angle, casting warm hues across the land. Shadows grow longer. The light turns amber, rose, and honey. And when that light meets a supercell, it paints the sky in ways words can barely describe. The base of the storm, usually grey or bluish, begins to glow with soft orange and bronze. The rising towers above it turn coral, lavender, and gold. The anvil cloud, if it spreads far enough, becomes a glowing canopy, lit from beneath like a lantern held high in the sky. From the ground, the scene feels unearthly, quiet, sacred. You may find yourself still, not because the storm commands fear, but because it invites awe. There is no sound, except, perhaps, the distant hush of wind or the low pulse of thunder on the edge of hearing. Everything else is silent. Sunlight flickers through falling rain, creating sheets of gold. Vinegar trails, where rain evaporates before reaching the ground, catch the light like threads of silk, glowing for just a moment before vanishing into air. Birds may glide homeward beneath the storm. Trees sway gently. The land darkens in contrast, framing the storm like a living sculpture. This moment doesn't last long. The sun continues its descent. The light fades, and the colours begin to soften into dusk. But for those few moments, when the light is just right, the supercell becomes more than weather. it becomes memory, a quiet meeting of earth, air, and light. Let that be your sunset tonight. Even if you cannot see it, imagine it, a quiet storm glowing softly, bathing in the last light of day before the stars arrive. Tucked gently behind the core of a supercell is something known as the rear flank downdraft, a curtain of descending air that wraps around the storm's rotating center like a protective shawl. But unlike the name suggests, this downdraft isn't always strong or forceful. In quiet supercells, it moves with elegance. It doesn't crash to the ground or push violently outward. It flows, cool, calm, and deliberate. Let's imagine it now. As the updraft lifts warm air into the heart of the storm, some of that air begins to cool. Moisture condenses. Rain forms. And in the rear side of the supercell, often behind the main rotation, cooler, drier air begins to descend. This is the rear flank downdraft, a soft sigh of the storm, gathering air from above and guiding it gently downward. This motion helps balance the rotation. It defines the rear edge of the storm, shaping how the base looks and moves. You might see a lowering cloud or a soft clearing between bands of cloud. But what you're really seeing is a quiet exhale. Sometimes the downdraft wraps around the storm's base like a loose spiral. It interacts with the inflow, air coming into the storm, and creates boundaries. Lines, edges that define where motion begins and ends. In noisier storms, this feature can be dramatic, but in quiet supercells, it's graceful, subtle, a shift in wind direction, a coolness to the air, a sense that the storm is gently gathering itself inward. It is not a collapse, it's a transition, from rotation to rest, from energy to quiet, from breath to release. The rear flank downdraft reminds us that not every descent is sudden, not every ending is loud. Sometimes the atmosphere lowers itself slowly, like a cloud sinking into thought. So, as we drift into the next part of the storm story, let this gentle current guide you. Let the downdraft wrap softly around your breath. Let it cradle you in its calm descent. And let the sky's quiet architecture hold you, just as it holds the storm. Sometimes the sky begins something, and then gently lets it go. This is the story of the funnel cloud that fades. Not every spiral that descends from a supercell touches the ground. Some never finish forming. They drift downward, quietly, tentatively, only to dissolve before becoming anything more. To watch a fading funnel is to witness a moment of indecision in the atmosphere. Not a failure, just a breath that changed its mind. Funnel clouds begin when rotation within the storm tilts vertically and tightens. A column of spinning air, usually invisible, begins to gather moisture. As condensation increases, it becomes visible as a slender finger reaching from the cloud base toward the earth. But then, something changes. Maybe the air beneath is too dry. Maybe the rotation isn't quite strong enough. Maybe balance returns before motion deepens. And so the funnel slows. It loses focus, it thins, it vanishes. These ghost-like spirals are common in quiet supercells. They form without drama, stretch downward briefly, then retract, like a thought the sky forgot to finish. They pose no threat. They carry no urgency. They exist purely in transition, a visible sign of a conversation the storm is having with itself. You might see one from a safe distance, a soft grey thread drifting halfway down, tapering off like smoke in reverse. Or you might only notice the way the base of the cloud pulses with motion, suggesting a spiral that almost was. To witness a funnel fade is not a disappointment. It's a meditation, a reminder that nature doesn't always complete its cycles in full. Sometimes it begins and then releases. And in that release, there is peace. There's beauty in a spiral that softens, in motion that pauses before impact, in the sky whispering, "Not this time." Let that be a comfort, that not every turn must lead to change. Not every formation needs to finish. Sometimes it's enough just to begin. In the vast openness of the atmosphere, sometimes the most important moments happen where two air masses meet. These are known as boundaries, places where warm and cool air brush gently against one another. Not colliding, but mingling. And along these seams, quiet supercells often bloom. Tonight, we settle along such a boundary. Imagine standing in a field where the breeze feels uneven, warm on one cheek, cooler on the other. That's the subtle sign that a boundary is near. These meeting places are rarely visible to the eye, but they are felt in the air. A soft shift, a change in direction, a quiet dance between air parcels of different temperatures and moisture levels. Here, rising air is gently encouraged. The warm air, being lighter, glides upward over the cooler surface air. It doesn't surge, it lifts with patience. And in that motion, small but persistent, a storm begins to form. Supercells that emerge along boundaries often carry a certain elegance. They are aligned with contrast, defined by balance. The boundary gives them structure. It provides a launching point for rotation, a place where energy collects without rushing. You might see clouds gather along a line, cumulus bubbling, growing, reaching. And then one begins to rise higher, stronger, rotating gently, becoming its own quiet entity. From afar, you'll see its base form just above the seam, nestled between two different kinds of air. The storm doesn't burst onto the scene, it unfolds, its structure encouraged by the very tension that holds the boundary in place. And as the supercell drifts away from that line, the boundary remains behind, still subtle, still waiting, still offering space for the next breath of weather to rise. These seams in the atmosphere are like threads in a quilt, softly stitching together regions of warmth and coolness, moisture and dryness, stillness and motion. Let yourself rest at the edge of that seam tonight. Feel the soft brush of contrast, the hush of change, the moment before formation. Because sometimes the calmest weather begins right where the atmosphere decides to meet itself. As day fades and night begins, something quiet stirs just above the earth. It doesn't shout, it doesn't ripple flags or rattle trees, but it flows, constantly, gently, like a river in the sky. This is the low-level jet, a narrow stream of fast-moving air that forms just above the surface in the early evening hours. And it is one of the quiet forces that fuels the night's weather. Low-level jets typically form as the surface cools after sunset. The temperature difference between the air near the ground and the air aloft creates conditions for this gentle stream to take shape. Winds that were spread out during the day begin to organize, accelerating into a focused flow. This current moves swiftly but silently. If you could float inside it, you'd feel its direction, its warmth, its quiet purpose. It's not chaotic, it's composed. For a quiet supercell, this jet provides a fresh supply of warm, moist air. It feeds the storm's inflow, sustains its rotation, and helps it live longer through the cool of evening, even if the surface air feels calm, still enough for birds to rest and grasses to sway only slightly. Just a few hundred meters above, this wind moves steadily across the landscape. You might notice it in subtle ways. a pattern of clouds aligning just before dusk, a storm that strengthens as the stars begin to emerge. A soft change in direction, felt only in your skin. The low-level jet doesn't announce itself. It simply arrives. It supports. It sustains. In some regions, it moves from the south, carrying air rich with humidity. In others, it glides eastward, shaping lines of gentle storms that whisper across the plains. Tonight, let's drift within it. Let's become part of the stream, riding its path above sleeping fields, past moonlit farms and silent rivers, fueling nothing but the breath of the atmosphere. The low-level jet is a night wind, a sky stream, a quiet engine behind quiet storms. Let it carry you. High above the earth, storms sometimes begin to cry, but their tears never reach the ground. This phenomenon is called virga, rain that falls from a cloud, but evaporates before it ever touches the soil. To watch virga from a distance is to see the sky begin to rain, and then quietly change its mind. It looks like threads or streamers of silver-grey silk drifting downward in slow, trailing motions. You might see it stretching beneath the belly of a high-based supercell, where the cloud base is lifted far above the land. From that height, rain begins to fall, but the air below is too dry, too warm, so the droplets vanish on the way down, turning into vapor, fading into air. No splash, no scent of petrichor, only the motion. From far away, these trailing curtains hang in the sky like falling whispers, soft vertical strokes that paint the air in calm motion. They appear almost weightless. They never rush. They sway in the upper wind, bending slightly, like threads caught in slow current. At sunset, virga glows. The light catches each delicate trail, turning it golden, lavender, or even rose-colored. What might have been a brief rain shower becomes instead a slow burning tapestry across the sky. You may see virga over the plains, where dry air clings to the earth like a sleeping blanket. Or in desert places, where storms hover overhead but offer no release. Instead of soaking the soil, they simply drift by, their intentions never fully formed. Meteorologists note virga for practical reasons. It cools the air beneath, creates subtle downdrafts, and sometimes even sparks new boundaries. But for us, it's a quiet ballet, a reminder that the sky doesn't always complete its actions, that some things fall halfway, then return to air, and that not every beginning needs an ending. Tonight, imagine the virga above you, falling, fading, then falling again. A storm painting the air with gestures of rain, but never making a sound. Let it soothe you. Let it pass through you. Let it remind you that even unfulfilled motion can still be beautiful. There is a quiet stream that moves invisibly through the sky, a soft ribbon of humid air known as a moisture tongue. It isn't something you can see on your own. It doesn't cast a shadow or raise a breeze. But meteorologists find it, threaded through drier regions, feeding the base of storms like a secret river in the air. This moisture tongue stretches from more humid areas, like the Gulf of Mexico or other warm sources, and extends into otherwise dry parts of the atmosphere. It moves softly, steadily, without turbulence. And when it reaches the right place, it becomes fuel. Quiet supercells rely on these tongues of moisture. They form along them, drawing in the soft, unseen humidity, turning it into clouds, into motion, into breath. You might imagine this tongue as a strand of silk winding its way through a patchwork of dry air, a path of softness, a thread of possibility. It doesn't push, it flows, like a sigh held in the chest of the sky. From above, Weather maps show the moisture tongue as a shaded ribbon. A gradient of higher dew points stretching across a broader canvas. To a meteorologist, it's a subtle sign. Something is forming. Something is aligning. And down below, we begin to see it take shape. Clouds build where the moisture gathers. A storm's base lowers where the tongue meets lift. And slowly, a supercell forms, quietly, patiently, fed not by violence, but by invisible generosity. This stream may last for hours, or only moments, but its presence gives shape to something greater. Let it be a reminder that support can be quiet, that the things feeding us most may move unseen. Tonight, let the moisture tongue wrap gently around your dreams, soft, slow, nourishing, carrying the sky forward, one breath at a time. Some storms churn, some storms tear, but the quiet supercell spins. It doesn't twist in fury, it turns with care, a calm, wide, steady spiral, stretching from cloud base to anvil top. This spin is called a mesocyclone, and it is the defining heartbeat of a supercell. But unlike chaotic whirlwinds, this one rotates like a thought, slowly gathering, turning over, continuing. From the ground, you may see the rotation only if you watch long enough. The base of the cloud curves, edges drift sideways, lowerings pulse in and out. It's not fast, it's not sharp, it's meditative. Inside the storm, air flows in wide circles, rising, turning, rising again. The rotation helps separate the storm's parts, updraft from downdraft, moisture from dry descent. This keeps the supercell alive, organized, balanced. Rotation, when gentle, is life-giving. It brings stability. It allows structure to unfold in layers. And the rotation itself isn't imposed. It's drawn from wind shear, lift, moisture. The storm doesn't force itself to turn. It allows itself. To drift alongside this spin is to be part of something timeless. The earth rotates, the winds curve, and in the sky, a storm mirrors it all in soft, turning rhythm. Tonight, imagine floating beside it. No sound, no struggle, just air moving in circles, just the sky doing its own gentle dance. There are moments when the sky feels too still, when even the trees seem to pause. The air doesn't stir, the birds go quiet, and the world feels as if it's gently holding its breath. This is one of the most delicate stages of storm formation, the moment just before everything begins, before motion returns, before the sky releases what it's been quietly building. Meteorologists sometimes refer to this as a pre-storm calm, but it's more than just silence. It's a feeling. The atmosphere becomes poised, like a drawn bow, or a tide before it turns. The warm air near the ground is ready to rise, but for now it stays, pressed beneath a cap of warmer air above. The layers are stacked, balanced. Tension exists, but it isn't urgent. It waits. During these moments, you might notice the world feels heavy, but not in a burdensome way, more like a deep stillness settling into the land. There's no wind, or maybe just the softest movement in the grass. Even insects hush their wings. It's as if everything is listening. This stillness is part of how quiet supercells form, because nothing rushes. The atmosphere prepares itself in silence, layer by layer, thought by thought. Invisible currents align, humidity gathers just out of sight, shear increases aloft, and yet everything below remains calm. To sit in this moment is to feel the air before the breath, not fearfully, not with tension, but with gentle awareness. You might feel a slight pressure in your chest, like the air around you is thick with possibility. It is, but it's not dramatic. It's peaceful, patient. Eventually, something shifts. Just enough lift breaks through the balance. A bubble of warm air begins to rise, softly, slowly, and the atmosphere exhales. Clouds begin to gather, but they don't erupt. They form with quiet elegance, drifting upward as if remembering what motion feels like. The sky doesn't explode, it resumes. Tonight, we sit in that pause, in the moment before the first cloud rises, in the hush between patterns, in the breath the sky holds before it gently turns. Let the stillness comfort you, not as emptiness, but as preparation, because sometimes the greatest acts begin in quiet. Sometimes we don't watch storms with our eyes. We watch them with instruments. Radar is one of those quiet tools, sending out invisible signals and listening for their return. And what it gives us back is not noise, but image. A soft painting of motion and moisture traced across time. When we view a supercell on radar, we see something special. Not a blob, not a flash, but a hook, a curved spiral, delicate and smooth, forming as the storm begins to rotate. This hook doesn't snap into place. It emerges, one frame at a time, like watching ink slowly bloom through water. As precipitation wraps around the storm's rotating core, radar begins to pick it up. Light rain appears as soft green. Heavier cores, like gentle pulses, glow yellow or orange. The rotating tail, what meteorologists call the hook echo, bends inward, curving like a question mark drawn in watercolor. There's no urgency in these images, just evolution, the atmosphere expressing itself in color and shape. Over time, the radar scan reveals the storm's heartbeat. You'll see its inflow region, where air is drawn in, showing as a gap in the echoes. You'll see outflow drift outward in wide, faded rings. And all of it moves at a pace that invites stillness. Quiet supercells on radar don't shout. They compose. They form swirls and arches, like brushstrokes on a sleeping sky. You might imagine watching these images on a quiet screen in a dim room. The light is low. The storm spins softly, frame by frame, and you begin to understand. Radar doesn't just detect weather, it reveals its language. Tonight, we trace those echoes together. We don't analyze, we don't predict. We just observe the art the storm leaves behind, shaped in rainfall, turned in silence, and rendered by air. Let the radar echo fade into thought, like color melting into night. All storms fade eventually, even the quiet ones. And when a supercell begins to weaken, it doesn't collapse. It unravels, gracefully, gently, like a lullaby that's reached its final note. The sky simply exhales and lets go. As the storm matures, its balance begins to shift. The updraft that once lifted warm air high into the clouds starts to lose strength. The inflow slows, moisture becomes scattered, and the precise rotation that defined the supercell begins to soften. From the ground, you may not notice much at first. The sky still holds its shape. The anvil cloud still stretches across the horizon. But the crisp edges begin to blur. The textures smooth. The layered structure, once so clearly defined, begins to melt into itself. Raindrops become lighter, or drift away entirely. Lightning flickers less often. The wind calms. The energy that once spun the storm in perfect alignment now spreads out, released, no longer gathered. This is not decay, it's a return. The supercell doesn't resist. It yields. It folds its motion inward, one breath at a time, until the atmosphere rests once more. From a satellite, the storm's form becomes softer. The central core fades. The hook echo disappears. And in its place, peace. This is the beauty of weather's full story, that every rise has a gentle fall, that every beginning leads to a graceful end. Some storms break apart, Others drift into memory, and quiet supercells simply settle, like feathers floating to the ground. Let the idea of that bring comfort, that even the most majestic systems do not last forever, and their ending is not a loss, it's a release. Tonight, we lie beneath a sky that once spun, now calm, now quiet, now free. The storm has ended, and the night breathes on. Even after a supercell fades, the sky remembers. Long after the rain has stopped, after the thunder has gone quiet, and the rotation has settled back into stillness, the upper clouds continue to hold the shape of what once was. These are the ghosts of former storms. They drift silently through the upper atmosphere, wisps of cirrus, faint veils of anvil cloud, slowly unraveling spirals that once belonged to something larger. Their presence is gentle, almost dreamlike, not haunting, but nostalgic. To look up after a supercell has moved on is to see its echo, not in sound, but in structure. You may notice fine strands of cloud stretched thin across the sky, or a faint arc still clinging to the horizon, painted in soft grey and pale gold by the fading sun. These remnants are not static. They continue to drift, carried by upper-level winds, reshaped by subtle temperatures, slowly thinning into transparency. But for a while, they retain the outline of the storm's final breath. They're like footprints in a field, softened by wind, or the ripple left by a boat that has long since passed. Meteorologists sometimes call these debris clouds, or simply anvil remnants, but their names don't capture the feeling they evoke. These clouds are memories in motion, a soft afterimage of strength that has since moved on. There is something peaceful in watching them fade. It reminds us that everything, even the most towering storms, eventually gives way to calm. And that beauty doesn't vanish all at once. It lingers, softens, and then becomes part of the wider sky again. In the moments just before sunset, these ghost clouds can catch the last rays of light, glowing faintly in peach or violet, glowing from within like sky embers. And when night falls, they slowly vanish into the stars. You may forget the details of the storm, but you'll remember the shape it left behind. A drift of cirrus, a ripple in the sky, a soft sign that something once lived there. Let the ghosts of former storms keep you company tonight, not as something lost, but as something beautiful, now gently at rest. When a storm exhales, it leaves behind a soft current of air, a parting gesture, cool and calm. This is an outflow boundary, a gentle gust that spreads along the ground after a storm has released its breath. It moves with purpose, but not urgency. And as it glides across fields, rivers, and roads, it brings a quiet kind of motion to the world below. Imagine standing in still air, then suddenly feeling a cooler breeze brushing past your arms. Not strong, not chilling, just different, fresh, like the edge of something that has just moved on. That's the outflow. It comes from the storm's downdraft, air that descended inside the storm, cooled by rain and evaporation, and then spread outward along the surface. Unlike the storm itself, the outflow boundary is peaceful. It stirs grass. It bends wildflowers. It creates ripples across ponds that had been still for hours. Sometimes you can see it. A line of thin, low clouds may form along its path. Birds might lift slightly in its passing, or distant dust might rise along a field, gently marking its motion. The boundary doesn't linger long. It moves on, quietly reshaping the atmosphere as it goes. In some cases, it may brush against warm, humid air, lifting it ever so slightly. And when conditions are just right, this subtle lift can spark a new storm. Not a violent one, but another quiet supercell, born from the breath of the one before it. Storms leaving behind the seed of another. It's a cycle of softness. Even in departure, the storm leaves room for new creation, a whisper of continuity, a weathered lullaby passed along the air. Tonight, let us walk with the outflow. Let it rustle the trees around you. Let it carry away the weight of the day. Let it remind you that every release can lead to renewal. The storm may be over, but the air is still listening. Sometimes, to truly see a storm, you need to rise above it. From high in the mountains, the view of a supercell changes. No longer towering above you, it meets your eyes at level height. And suddenly, you are face to face with the atmosphere's slowest ballet. Perched on a ridgeline or nestled in a quiet alpine meadow, you become a skywatcher, not just looking up, but looking across. From this elevation, the layers of the storm are easier to see. The base, flat and wide, drifts beneath you like the floor of a cloud ocean. The mid-level towers curl upward and begin to turn, and the upper anvil cloud stretches toward the horizon like a soft canopy. Rotation becomes visible, not as a threat, but as structure. You can watch the mesocyclone gently spin, a slow spiral of motion captured in cloud. There's no fear here, just reverence. Birds of the highlands circle gently below the anvil's edge. The wind carries faint scents of pine and stone. Everything feels still, yet awake. You may hear distant thunder roll through the valleys below, its sound softened by distance, reaching you like a memory more than a message. From this vantage point, you understand the storm not as a thing that comes and goes, but as a part of the landscape, moving across it like a river in the sky. You're not under the storm, you're beside it, watching, learning, breathing in rhythm with the clouds. Let tonight's rest feel like that mountaintop, a quiet place of perspective, a soft seat above the movement. Let the storms drift by, not over you, but beside you, and may you feel just a little closer to the atmosphere's gentle turning. Some sights in the sky are meant for the day, but others belong only to the night. A supercell under moonlight is one of those rare, hushed wonders, too quiet to capture, too soft to explain, yet unforgettable once seen. There is no lightning, no glaring flash, just the slow rotation of cloud beneath a silver sky. And at the heart of that quiet storm, turning in patient circles, is the mesocyclone. From the ground, it may take a few minutes for your eyes to adjust. The darkness blankets everything first, but then the moon appears, slowly rising behind the landscape, its light soft and diffused. And there, just above the horizon, is the silhouette of the storm. The moonlight reveals its curves, its subtle rotation, its form. You may see the base of the supercell outlined in shades of pewter and blue-grey. You might notice the tower rising upward, broad, smooth, and coiled. If the air is clear, you can trace the rotation as it moves silently, the mesocyclone sweeping through the sky like a brush dipped in moonlight. This turning isn't fast. It's a slow, deliberate breath, like the sky is remembering how to move. The moonlight adds dimension. It draws the eye to layers that would be lost in shadow. A curl here, a curve there, each one lit just enough to suggest its motion, but never enough to steal the night's softness. Sometimes, thin sheets of cirrus drift in front of the moon, making its light flicker across the surface of the storm. The cloud base becomes a silvered mirror. The anvil above may glow faintly, stretched wide like a quiet hand resting across the stars. And in this pale light, the storm is not a warning. It's a sculpture, a skyborne shape, moving to a rhythm only the upper winds can hear. There may be no thunder, no rain reaching the ground, just the movement, just the moon, just the mesocyclone turning gently in the distance. To witness this is to feel part of something old, a ritual repeated night after night, though rarely seen. The atmosphere, at peace with itself, turning, breathing, glowing. Let this chapter carry you tonight. Let the rotation lull you. Let the moonlight soften your thoughts. Let the storm pass silently, never needing to speak to be understood. Because some beauty lives only in shadow, and some peace only arrives under the gaze of the moon. Some storms live short lives. They form, they drift, they fade, but others stay. They linger across the landscape for hours, turning slowly, moving deliberately, never in a rush to disappear. These long-lasting storms are called persistent supercells, and their endurance is a quiet wonder of the sky. To last through an evening, a supercell needs more than strength. It needs balance, a soft, precise blend of conditions, each one aligned just enough to keep the storm alive. Let's look at those ingredients now. First, moisture. Not in excess, but just enough, especially in the middle levels of the atmosphere. This gentle humidity allows clouds to rise, sustain themselves, and remain organized. It keeps the storm nourished, but never overfed. Then, lift. This is the upward motion that gives the storm its breath. In long-lived supercells, the lift is steady, not forced. It might come from a boundary or gentle convergence in the wind. It doesn't shout, it invites. Next, wind shear. This is the change in wind speed and direction with height. In a lasting supercell, shear is strong enough to help the storm rotate, but not so erratic as to pull it apart. The winds curve, the updraft tilts, and the storm begins to turn. But the secret is in how these ingredients combine. A little more of one, a little less of another, and the storm may unravel early. When they align perfectly, the storm finds its rhythm. It separates its updraft from its downdraft. It maintains a rotating core, and it begins to sustain itself, hour after hour, like a candle that won't flicker out. And yet, despite this quiet power, it remains gentle. Its edges don't fray. Its motion stays smooth. It may drift across fields, along the plains, over low hills, barely touching the surface, but always breathing. From the ground, you might watch it stretch from one horizon to the next, its shape unchanged for what feels like an entire evening. Sometimes it glows beneath the stars. Sometimes it hides in shadow. But always, it moves with intention. And when it finally begins to fade, as all storms do, you may not even notice right away. It unravels as it lived, quietly, softly, completely. Tonight, may your thoughts find that same balance. Moisture, lift, shear, calm. Let your breath rise and fall like the layers of a storm. And may your rest last as long as a supercell drifting peacefully through the night. Not every storm arrives with force. Not every supercell is meant to stir the world below. Some glide across the landscape like quiet dancers, their clouds tall and turning, their rain soft and even, their wind never touching down. These are the harmless supercells, the ones that travel far but disturb nothing. From the ground, they seem almost considerate. They float above fields, past forests, and over rivers, leaving the earth untouched. Their rainfall may be steady, but never torrential. You might hear thunder, but only as a low hum, rolling gently along the horizon. The kind that blends into the night like a faraway drumbeat, a lullaby from the clouds. Their rotation is balanced, present, structured, even beautiful, but not reaching, not grasping, just turning quietly in place, like the slow inhale and exhale of the upper sky. There are no sudden gusts, no flashes close to the ground, no power lost, no trees shaken, just motion without consequence. These supercells often form late in the day, when the sun is low and the air is tired. They may drift through rural landscapes where no one sees them, or across open plains where only the tall grasses listen. And when they pass, they leave behind only cooled air, a soft scent of rain, and the memory of something that could have been, but chose otherwise. It's easy to forget that weather doesn't always seek drama. Sometimes it simply exists. It forms, it turns, it moves, and it releases, all without ever reaching the ground. These quiet supercells remind us that power doesn't always express itself in action. Sometimes it expresses itself in restraint. They are reminders of potential held, but not forced, of balance maintained, even when the ingredients whisper otherwise. To witness one is to feel the sky at peace with itself. So tonight, let the idea of these harmless storms bring you comfort. That beauty can pass overhead without ever asking to be noticed. That motion can exist without stirring, and that not all storms are meant to arrive. Some are simply meant to drift. Sometimes all the ingredients are there. The air is warm and moist. The winds are changing with height. The sky is darkening. The pressure is shifting. The atmosphere feels ready, full of quiet tension. And yet, nothing happens. No cloud towers rise, no storm forms, no rain falls. The sky changes its mind. This is one of the most peaceful, overlooked moments in meteorology, the near miss, the stillborn storm, the hush that lingers in place of what might have been. You may feel it as a strange quiet. The wind slows to stillness. The birds pause in mid-air. The leaves hang without motion. Everything waits and waits, and then continues, as if the pause was the only purpose, as if the storm was never meant to be. There's no warning to lift, no rainfall to measure, no headline to write, just a soft reset. The clouds slowly break apart. The pressure evens out. The air warms once more. And what's left is peace. It's easy to see storms as stories, beginnings, middles, and ends. But sometimes the story never starts. And that's its own kind of beauty. To sit beneath a sky that almost stormed is to witness potential held without release. A canvas that was never painted. A breath that stayed within the chest. It's not a disappointment, it's a meditation, a pause that calms, a silence that holds, a lesson that not every signal demands a response. And maybe in your own sky tonight, the thoughts swirling in your mind, the worries gathering like low clouds, maybe those too will soften. Maybe the storm inside you won't form. Maybe it doesn't need to. Let that be your rest. Not because nothing happened, but because nothing needed to. The sky darkened, the winds shifted, and peace arrived instead. And as our journey through the quiet mysteries of supercells comes to a close, may the slow turns of the sky, the softly layered clouds, and the whisper of distant storms bring you peace tonight. We've wandered through storms that didn't roar, but rotated in silence. We've watched the atmosphere breathe, hold still, and sometimes change its mind altogether. And along the way, we found that even the most powerful weather systems can move without noise. and end without fanfare. I hope this brought you a sense of calm, a soft place to land at the end of your day, a moment of stillness held gently inside the sky's open hands. If you'd like to support these dreamy weather explorations, you're welcome to like or subscribe, but only if it feels restful to do so. There's no pressure, just quiet presence. Now, your breath can slow, the clouds can soften, the sky can sleep. You've arrived.